Hi, my name's Cameron. I'm cycling a tandem bicycle from the northern tip of North America to the southern tip of South America, with the rear seat occupied by the people I meet along the way. This is The Random Tandem, Episode 3. At this point, I'd now been on the road for 3.5 months, and together with 8 partners joining me along the way, I made it down to Vancouver in southwest Canada. So far the trip had gone pretty much as well as I could have hoped, as I'd had months of mostly fair and temperate weather. I'd loved the company of everyone that joined me on the bike. I'd not needed to request the help of any passing cars, and I had no significant mechanical issues, not even so much as a flat tyre. But over the subsequent 6 months that took me down to my current location in Mexico, all of those things would change. It would be a stretch of incredible highs and some deep lows.
I'm so broken right now.
But thankfully the days immediately following my arrival in Vancouver were some of the best. It started when I met Chris at the city train station. He was to be my next riding partner after he'd stumbled onto one of my videos, gotten in touch, and made the trip up from his home in Seattle to join me. Our first meeting was a little awkward, as a local news station who caught wind of what I was up to and was there to film our initial meeting. But we were quickly on the bike and making our way south into the United States. Up until Vancouver, there had only ever been one or at most 2 route options for how to make our way south. But from here on, the number of options exploded. I'd always been one to actively avoid planning how I would get somewhere, electing instead to follow direct routes such as highways and freeways, doing so in the belief that less planning allowed for more discovery. Chris, on the other hand, found great comfort in knowing exactly how we'd get somewhere and where we'd sleep each night. So when I told him that I was interested in heading to Colorado, he planned a route across Washington for us, following the state's network of bike trails and country roads. To say this was a change for me is an understatement. Gone were the bland highways and scream of passing traffic, and in its place came days of wilderness and peace. It was here, when I stood on this hillside trail, looking down on the exact type of highway that I'd usually be on, that I realised many of my prior assumptions were wrong. A thoroughly planned journey does not have to come at the expense of improvisation or discovery, and when everything goes right, it even enhances it. After 4 days together, we left behind the greens of the Cascade Mountain Range and descended into the yellows and oranges of the eastern Washington farming regions. At this point, we were in our groove, and we were comfortable and fast, sometimes going much further than we'd planned. This meant that now, after Chris had brought me into his world, that I could bring him into mine, as we searched for a place to camp only when we needed it. This was something that he was a little uncomfortable with at first, but wound up creating some of our most special evenings together.
I really enjoyed the camping. Like, there was a couple evenings where I expected, based on my route planning, that we'd stay in a motel or something like that. And I'm so glad that those decisions that we made on 2 occasions just to push on a little bit, we ended up camping out in the open. I enjoyed it immensely.
So after only a few days, 2 strangers had become close friends, and our opposing perspectives had combined, settling somewhere in the middle, and we'd both grown happier as a result. I think it's hard to not see a real beauty in that.
I just thought it was so cool that 2 strangers could get together and work towards a common objective, which was just to ride and to cover distance. The icing on the cake is, I just had a blast. Yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
So glad I did it. Yeah.
What kind of weather do you reckon I'll
run? So you already know, you've heard a lot, not only from me, but from a lot of people about the weather that you're likely going to encounter.
2 days later, and I'd met my next backseat partner, named Alec. We spent a few days hanging out and preparing for Halloween, but by the time we'd gotten on the bike, the late autumn weather that everyone had warned me about had finally arrived. Our first day together required us to cross a mountain pass and turned out to be one of the most uncomfortable and even dangerous situations I've been in on a bike. Come that evening, we'd made camp and were trying to get warm again while discussing the crazy day we just had. But in telling this story, I'm kind of posed with a bit of a challenge because in the cold conditions that we climbed into, all of our technology stopped working. And of all the times that I tried to record something, the only uncorrupted file that got through was this. A 2-second clip of us shivering before the camera freeze frames for the next 5 minutes. So I'm going to let Alec tell the story of what happened that day, but to try and show you, I'm going to have to get a little creative.
Can you essentially spell out what unfolded on our first day of cycling together?
Oh God, that was the most miserable I've been in a long time.
Good answer.
It started off wonderfully. It was pretty mild, cloudy.
2, 1,
And then it started to rain. Riding up a nice paved canyon road, Beauty Creek. It's quite beautiful. And then it got steep, the road turned to dirt. Shortly after, it started raining hard. Then our road ceased to be a road and turned out to be just a hillside with a little trail on it. With like 30 or more downed trees. Shortly after that, it started snowing after we were already soaking wet, and we're now pedaling down up and down dirt Forest Service roads, hoping that it takes us to I-90. Meanwhile, our brakes are getting worn more and more away, where we have to stop and tighten the brakes up with Cam's numb hands. Still snowing. Get to I-90, the top of the pass, and start going down the shoulder of I-90. After a mile or two downhill, our brakes had completely worn away, and we proceeded to walk the bike down the shoulder of I-90.
On a continuous downhill, and we were walking it.
Oh God. Oh. Luckily, a gentleman from Oregon pulled over in his truck and gave us a ride into Kellogg.
We continued on together for another day, enjoying the low altitude weather, but unable to ignore the much larger mountain pass still ahead of us. Everyone who knows the area had told us that we should not be anywhere near it on a bicycle, and when we saw the forecast for the coming week, with temperatures dropping far below freezing, we had to acknowledge that we'd now run out of options. So we talked it over and made the tough decision to pull the pin, resulting in us getting a lift back to town, followed by me catching a bus back to Seattle, accepting that I'd not given the cold climate the respect it deserved. When I arrived, I was sure to re-intercept my path from the last time I was there, and I continued on my way south. The rain made brief reappearances, and at times even the snow did too, but the worst of it was left behind in the states to the east, and this newly appreciated contrast made my ride down the west coast feel like heaven.
I mean, it's been an established trail that people have taken, but I think they've just kind of started to make it more.
The beginning of the day was so fun to ride out of town with a couple of locals. Definitely feeling chilly, can't feel anything below the ankles, and hands are moving real slow, but it's been a good day. I'm so happy. My hands are warm, my toes are starting to thaw a little bit. I'm so satisfied. We made it.
1, go.
I'm Cameron. Nice to meet you. I'm Tim.
Nice to meet you. Oh, you got 2 days hot sauce.
While passing through Oregon, I stopped into Commotion to visit the birthplace of my bike. I rode perhaps the most beautiful stretch of road I've ever seen on the Avenue of the Giants in Northern California. I had the strange experience of watching the Finnish news story about myself.
Making the journey from Alaska all the way down to the tip of South America.
I discovered that I need to do a better job of protecting my food bag. After it had been freshly replaced from being stolen by a bear in Canada, it now came to get chewed through by mice.
These things aren't cheap. And they keep getting messed up.
And I saw plenty of animals, from the large ones that stop traffic. That is very strange. To the small ones that could only hope that traffic would stop for them. On day 153, I found one that had not quite been so lucky.
It's this little tiny owl on the side of the road. I really hope he's not dead. I can't tell.
You alive? Oh my god, he just moves.
The nearest vet is 88 kilometres further.
Come on, it's okay.
If I pedal pretty much non-stop, I should be able to get to the vet in like 4.5 hours. And what's your name going to be, eh? I think Marvin.
I'm gonna save you, mate.
Hi there. Yeah, my name's Cameron. I'm just cycling through and I feel
Okay.
it's just sitting in the shoulder and
Thanks, Cameron.
no worries, my pleasure.
Have a good one.
Thank you very much, you guys as well. Thank you very much. Thank you. As the weeks marched on, the approaching winter felt increasingly present. I'd often wake up to frozen water bottles and layers of frost, and while riding south was the best direction to keep daylight hours to a maximum, there was no outpacing the march of time, which resulted in an increasing amount of time each day spent riding in the dark. On one of these days, I'd spent the daylight hours riding through some fairly unremarkable landscape, and in the later hours of a dark night, when I could see nothing except that which fell into the cone of light ahead of me, I heard the unmistakable sound of waves crashing below. Before then, I didn't feel like I was that close to the coast, so curiosity got the better of me. I hid behind a rock on my side and slept under the stars, hoping that I'd wake up to something pretty special the following morning.
Alright, see you in the morning.
This was the area of the California coastline known as Big Sur, and for hour after hour I was treated to these magnificent winding roads along the cliffside. I feel very conscious of how I represent bike touring here, because for as much as experiences like this are true and do occur with some regularity, they still only represent something like 5% of the time on the bike. 90% of the time, however, is much more mundane. This still leaves another 5% unaccounted for. This last 5 is the yin to the yang of days like this one in Big Sur. It's the times when you're uncomfortable, or in pain, or feeling scared, or just generally reminded of the risks of a life with such constant exposure. These bad times also come with some regularity, and on the day after my lovely run through Big Sur, the universe was quick to rebalance my experience with a couple of days where I wished I could have been anywhere else.
So today has been a day that has really broken me. I'm just holding it together right now, and to not just scream in frustration is very hard. So I got a flat tire, and the flat tire happened at about 8 p.m, so it's pitch black just like it is right now. It's been raining just like it is right now, except heavier, on the side of a highway. So I pulled over and I changed the tire, and it took like an hour because getting the wheel in and out with like the hub, anyway, it's tricky. It just takes time. Kept riding, and within 3 minutes it goes flat again. It went flat again. Anyway, that's life. That's not life, to be honest. That's not a normal person's life in any way. A normal person's life does not have to deal with sleeping on a military base at 10 p.m, replacing their second flat tire, not having had dinner yet. But that is life in the sense that it's the life I've chosen. Let the record show, if I have a flat tire tomorrow, I'm going to throw my bike off the side of the highway. I do not know what I would do. I don't know what I would do. God, I'm so angry. It's happened again. 3 flat tires in 2 days. Every fix in the rain. 3rd time's the charm, I suppose. I cannot catch a break. I cannot catch a break. Pumped it up. And it exploded. My ears are still ringing. And it's almost dark and like, bike's unrideable. I just got to stick my thumb out now and see if I can find a car that will take a tandem. This is crazy.
After 3 hours attempting to hitch a ride on the side of a dark, busy highway, a couple named Art and Julie picked me up and drove me to the next town. I really could not have felt more thankful. Two days later, and I'd replaced my tyre and was passing through the northern suburbs of Los Angeles with Susan, my host from the previous night. When our short stretch together came to an end at the airport, I met Micah, my 16th riding partner, who would be joining me for the next few days. Micah and I had originally wanted to ride together a few months earlier in Montana, except after the cold conditions resulted in me never quite making it to him, he decided to fly down and meet me instead. Mexico was now fast approaching, but we wanted to find a week of riding that didn't require us to cross the border, so we went out east, crossing through Joshua Tree National Park, before eventually looping back down to San Diego. I was again stunned at how quickly the landscape could change, as we went from suburban lowlands one day to the dry desert the next, and a couple of days later even departing into snowfall. We encountered plenty of massive uphills, but were lucky enough to be treated to some of the absolute best downhills on the other side. After 8 days together, we rolled into San Diego, where Micah joined his family and I prepared to continue on into Mexico. In some ways, beyond this point, the training wheels would be coming off, so to speak, as I would now be stumbling through a language that I didn't know anywhere near as well as I should. there'd be quite a lot less bike-friendly infrastructure, and the dreaded humidity of the tropics was drawing ever closer. But before departing into this unknown, I was joined by someone who was the very opposite of that, a friend of mine from back home named Declan.
I'm Declan Brown, I'm 28, and I'm from Perth, WA, Fremantle.
Declan was the first person since Kaya in Alaska to join me on the bike with no significant riding experience. But he wasn't one to do anything in small doses, as he'd signed on for more distance than anyone else, going from San Diego down to the bottom of the Baja Peninsula together. By the way, if any other West Australians are looking at him and thinking, I know this guy's face from somewhere, then it could be from one of a few ads, like this one.
That's not an avocado.
This one.
Well done, Nate.
Or most recently, this one.
Yeah, but I need my car in the morning. I need my license.
Drink drive? Nah, not worth it.
As we approached the Mexican border, I wondered if we would encounter anything that would cause us an issue in crossing. It turned out that we would, and we'd wind up being delayed for over 2 hours as a result. But never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that it would be because of mandatory one-way turnstiles. No. By the time we'd crossed over and entered Tijuana, it was now night, which made for a stressful ride up the busy roads to clear the city. But once we were out, we really got moving. There were some things I knew to expect in Mexico, like wonderful food and scenery, both of which absolutely delivered. But what I'd not known is that the locals, and by that extension also the drivers passing us, would be some of the most courteous and kind-hearted of anywhere that I've ridden before. Declan and I were each eagerly aware of this delight, but unfortunately a lot of this was lost on him, as he was working through a new and much more overwhelming sensation.
I'm loving it. It's so good. This is the best. It's like survival. The fittest out here. It's crazy. I can't believe anyone's doing this for fun. You know what I mean? Like, this is just pure, like, life lessons. That's what it is. School of life lessons. Cam's already graduated. I don't know what he's still doing here. He's already graduated, but he's hanging about, and he's like that teacher that just doesn't leave, you know?
He was in a real bad place for a few days, but pushed on. After a week or so, his legs and bum returned to a feeling of normalcy, and he had the ability to enjoy much more of what was going on around him each day. But it was also around here that I reached a nice achievement of my own, being that of crossing the 10,000 kilometre mark, representing roughly 1/3 of this journey now being behind me.
It did sound like a spoke breaker. I swear to God, if we just broke a spoke on 10k, then that's horrific.
Right there on the 10,000 kilometre mark, we had indeed broken a spoke. But while fixing it, I noticed that the brake was indicative of a much larger problem, which was that the rear rim was both dented and cracked. The reason why this is important is that a wheel is only sturdy if it's circular when viewed from the side and flat when viewed from the top. The damage on this rim meant that this ideal shape was now impossible, resulting in spokes that would regularly snap, and the risk of a complete breakdown or even wheel collapse became relatively high. This is no problem if you're near a bike shop that can sell you a new rim, but the nearest one to us was still another 1,500 kilometres away. So all that we could do would be some rough on-the-road repairs using the limited material we had, and hope that it would hold out long enough to get us to that bike shop in La Paz.
Okay, we now have 8 spare spokes remaining. Last one left.
As we passed through the town of Loreto, still another 400 kilometres from our new wheel, we were joined at the airport by a lady from California named Lainey, who had flown down with her own bike to join us for a couple of weeks. We continued as a group of 3, even swapping riders from time to time as well, but unfortunately the spoke brakes were unrelenting.
Yep. Got nothing left except a hope and a prayer that they hold.
6 days later we rolled into La Paz, all out of spare parts, on a wobbly wheel with 2 broken spokes. This was about as tight of a margin as there could have been, and we were immensely thankful to have just squeaked in.
Really appreciated the feeling of the routine that we had, and just like that it kind of puts you in this mindset of where you don't really have any choices in like how your day kind of progresses, you know, like there's limited options, so you kind of just do the things, you know, you just wake up, you just pack down the tent, you get on the bike, you start pedaling for 6 hours because that's what you got to do, you know. And there's something like really liberating about that, and I would like to bring some of that back into my life.
From here, Declan departed for a more traditional holiday for a while Lainey and I did a loop down to the bottom of the peninsula and back. This loop was born partially of a natural desire to continue exploring, but also from a less obvious one to not skip over any distance, as the ferry I would soon catch would track partly south, and I wanted to make sure that I still ride every inch of latitude, even if the boat ride breaks my line a little bit. These last few days in Baja really treated us to some of the best campsite finds yet, including the upper story of a disused structure on the beach, and a hillside site where we scored the best sunrise that either of us had ever seen. One ferry ride and a few days later, I met back up with Declan, who had decided to get back on the bike, and we set off for our last stretch up to Mexico City. But after 3 days, we were hit with a catastrophic breakdown. The next morning, I diagnosed that the issue was deep within the internally geared rear hub, which meant that it would be unrideable until I could find replacement parts, a process which would take weeks.
As a silver lining though, the owners of the restaurant whose land we were sleeping on turned out to be incredible, as they asked all of their patrons if anyone could give us a lift back to where we started 3 days ago. One table offered us a ride, and another offered to host us for the night, and so after one hair-raisingly fast drive back down the mountain, we arrived back to the city of Puerto Vallarta. Declan has since returned home, but this is where I remained, stranded, waiting for some very niche bike parts to arrive in the mail.
It's been a heck of a last few months, containing both the best and worst that bike touring has to offer. It would be easy to say that the tenacity of me and the riding partners I've been with has pulled us through to this point, but that is not the case. The truth is that this has all only been possible because of the many people who have seen a stranger in need and have opened their hearts. From Danny's family back up in Alaska, to the folks of the restaurant who drove us and hosted us when everything fell apart. But back up in Washington, I received one gift that truly floored me. It was when I was with Chris on our one rest day. He and his riding mates scooped me up the first thing in the morning, and they took me to their local bike shop, Element Cycles, in Redmond, Washington. Here my bike was whisked away, with their 3 mechanics spending a whole day cleaning it, maintaining it, and replacing every worn component with a brand new one. At the end of the day, it rode like a whole new bike, and all these parts, plus the full day's work for 3 bike mechanics, was on the house. I've never known the word thank you to feel so entirely unfitting, but in the absence of an alternative, I'd like to say to Jake, Nick, Ryan, who was there on his day off, but most of all to Ty, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Memories like these have done a lot to help me through the process of being stranded, but also make me most excited to get back on the road again. When that does eventually happen, if you or anyone you know would like to jump on the back of the bike for a stretch, then drop me a line. You'd definitely be most welcome. Thanks for watching this, and I'll see you in the next one.
señor. ¿Cómo estás?
Me gusta estos videos. Me gusta mucho la foto.
That's no problem.
Yes! Victory!
The parts are here, baby. Yes.